sin. I've heard that before too. It may have been that that's when he received what we would call baptism. That's when we're cleansed of our original sin too. So it's not that St. John the Baptist was immaculately conceived. It's to say that he received a kind of baptism in the womb. So that's very possible because he met Jesus for the first time. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. And Jesus wasn't but maybe a few weeks old, if that. From the time of the Annunciation to whenever she went to visit Elizabeth. Couldn't have taken more than a week, maybe 2, to get to where she had to go. So Jesus was only a couple of weeks old in her womb at the time. So, just a little thing. But powerful enough for John the Baptist and Elizabeth both to recognize the presence of our Lord. So, if that's not a pro-life message, I don't know what is.
Wow.
So,
Chip, I
yes.
heard that it was about 50 miles.
About 50 miles, yeah, that's about right. So maybe even less than a week. It just depends on how long it took Mary to get into a caravan and how long it took them to get there. You just didn't hop into a car and drive out there, and she probably didn't have a donkey available, and even if she did, she wouldn't go by herself. Usually in ancient times like this, you went with a caravan of people, a train of people that were going, so that it protected you from bandits. If you traveled by yourself, you were susceptible to being jumped on by bandits. And so she wouldn't have done that. She would have went with some sort of group that was going in the direction that she was going, just for protection. So, yeah. So it may have not been, she went with haste, but she probably had to wait for a bus, had to wait for the next caravan to ensure your safety. So, yeah, that's a very, very good point. See, again, what hopefully what I'm trying to do is, as you read these stories in the Bible, you have to take out the modern mindset. Jesus walked everywhere that he went. He walked all over what we now call Israel. From the north, where the Sea of Galilee is, all the way to the south, and back again during his earthly ministry. I mean, we know where Jesus went. We read the Gospels. We can trace his itinerary as he goes, and he walked all of that. I mean, there were no buses, there were no cars, there were no, like I said, donkeys or camels that were readily available. They weren't wealthy. They walked everywhere, So it took a while to get from one place to another. It's not like us today. I mean, can you imagine? Probably be the equivalent, I want to see all of Israel, what would that be in terms of here? I would say the equivalent would be like walking from here to Santa Clarita. That's probably,
or more.
Or it's probably being conservative, but that's roughly going from one end of Israel to another. That's probably actually very short. It's probably a little bit further than that. But imagine walking that.
From here to Acton.
Here to Acton, yeah, could be.
40 miles.
40 miles, yeah. Yeah, it's about 35 miles from here to my school. So if you can imagine walking that distance, yeah. That's
pregnant too.
Yeah. Well, she probably didn't go that far. Well, no, 35 miles? Yeah, it would be that far, yeah.
How long did she stay with her cousin?
3 months.
3 months. She stayed there until John the Baptist was born.
Yeah.
Oh, she came back 3 months already.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the word came, and then they went, Joseph and herself went to Bethlehem, and so on and so forth. Which brings me to our calendar. So in case you weren't here last week, we're nearing the end of our season. As you can see, it's getting already festive. We will have Bible study next week, so plan to be here. After next week, on the 26th, no Bible study due to Thanksgiving. I want to take a week off, a break there. When we come back, we'll come back on the 3rd of December. I'm going to give a presentation on the Immaculate Conception, which will be that week, be a feast day for that week. Actually, I think it falls on us, let me see, that's Tuesday.
Sunday.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, yeah, Sunday. So this year, the Immaculate Conception falls on our regular Sunday obligation, so you get a double whammy, all right? Then we come back on the 10th, and I'm going to give my traditional Have a Merry Deconstructed Christmas, where we look at the Christmas account, the birth of Jesus in the Gospels, and deconstruct what actually happened during that time. So if you have never heard it, you should be here to hear it, because I debunk a lot of our Christmas myths. Things like it was in winter, they were looking for an inn, you know. Do you have room in the inn? No, sorry, we're all booked up. Oh, there's an innkeeper with a nice stable, you know. That whole idea most likely did not happen in that way. When Jesus was born, who was present when he was born, who actually visited him when he was born, versus who came later. Okay, so our traditional understandings of Christmas just kind of break away when we actually look at the account, which I think when you look at the final deconstructed Christmas is actually a lot more interesting in my mind than the Christmas myths that we've come up with and legends that we have about it, if you ask me. But that's just my opinion. So be sure to come for that. We will have our Bible study potluck party on the 17th, and I will be passing out a list for you to sign up for various items, whether it's a dessert or a main course or an appetizer, or simply if you want to bring cups and silverware. That's an option that you can do as well. We also have, if you want to bring decorations, like tablecloths. Yes?
We already have those.
What?
The tablecloths. Mine had leftovers from last week.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll just scratch it off the list. So there's something for everyone to bring. You may want to bring maybe centerpieces. That would be nice. And if you're unable for whatever reason to bring something, don't feel that you can't come. There's always more than enough food, and there's always more than enough Christmas spirit and joy to be spread around. So please come and enjoy our celebrating the Feast of the Incarnation, which is what I like to call Christmas. The Feast of the Incarnation. It's the time in which God became man and dwelt among us. A marvelous feast day. So please come and join with us. I will, as always, have my Christmas raffle. So make sure you look over your notes and review what we've done this year in Bible study, and be prepared to answer some questions about that, to earn some raffle tickets and get some Christmas prizes from me.
Gloria said something.
What?
So we have to study.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And then after the potluck, there will be no Bible study for the rest of December, because both Christmas and New Year's falls on Tuesday this year, so
Wednesday.
We're definitely not meeting on those days. And then Bible study will resume on January 7th. Brace yourself, 2020. 20 years into the second millennium. And that's something. I remember, like Alvaro says, I remember the whole Y2K thing, and the world coming to an end, and the sky was going to fall, You know, the whole world, we were going to come to a grinding halt. All the computers were going to seize up. It was the end of the world.
The Mayan calendar.
Then the Mayan calendar came in 2012. And again, oh, it's the end of the world. The sky is falling. We're still here. And I predict that there'll be a lot of people predicting, oh, it's the end of the world, it's 2020. Why now? Because it's a nice round number. You know, it's the end of the world, oh, the sky is falling. And you know what? You're gonna probably keep going the way it is.
So better to be prepared. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Always. Yes. There should be no fear in a Christian's heart about, quote, the end of the world or death. Because we know that if we are in a state of grace, we are going to meet our Lord, who will judge us justly. And if we have no mortal sin on our soul, we will be with him. We may have to spend a little time in purgatory, but we will be with him.
Forever and ever.
Forever and ever. So we have this hope within us. That was the one thing that characterized the early Christian communities, is that they had, A, no fear of death, and they had this unusual hope about them. Hope about what? About one day resurrecting into a new body, like the Lord did.
Like the gospel last Sunday, the 7 brothers.
Yes, yes. So and that was about, you know, the Pharisees trying to trick Jesus. It's like, well, in the resurrection, whose wife will she be? And you remember Jesus' answer? Mm-hmm. You do not understand the power of God.
Neither is she married.
There will be neither marriage nor given in marriage at the end of time. So, you just don't understand what it's going to be like at the end of time. Okay? So, yeah. And that actually was kind of a story taken out of, interestingly enough, the book of Tobit. Kind of. The book of Tobit, it talks about Sarah, who she gets married, but there's this demon that plagues her, that whenever the man tries to consummate the marriage, he gets killed. And so no one wants to marry her. And the whole story of Tobit is that he recognizes this curse and breaks it and ends up marrying her. And it's a very interesting story because she's had 7, if I'm not mistaken, 7 husbands and no heir. And so the Pharisees are probably talking about that story, which is interesting because as an evangelical, I'd have no knowledge of that story because it's not in Protestant Bibles. But it's interesting that they would bring it up as kind of like, where did they get this idea? Where did they make this up? Most likely it was derived from the story of Tobit. They're alluding to it. And Jesus isn't saying, well, that's just a silly story. Don't bother about it. He answers them as if it was a serious case. So that's a very interesting kind of answer that Jesus gives to the authenticity of the story of Tobit and what Jesus thinks about it. Very interesting little side note there. So anyway, so this is the calendar. I'll bring this again next week also so that everyone will know. So just be prepared for that.
It's on the website as well. I'll put the dates on the website.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
On the front page.
Excellent. So check on our website as well, stcharlesbiblestudy.com. It's in the bulletin for you to get updates like that as well. So let's get started with our theme verse. What is the theme of the Bible?
John 20:31.
John 20:31. And it says,
These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing you may have life in his name.
very good. Excellent. Very good. So for those of you who are still learning this, the way that you learn these memory verses is the old way that I did when I was in Sunday school. You say the reference and then you say the verse. John 20:31.
These are
Oh, say John 20:31.
John 20:31.
These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. Now, as I've mentioned before, to be sure, you can argue that this is the theme verse for just the Gospel of John. And that would be true, because that's where it was written. But by extension, this is the theme that ties the whole Bible together. Why do we have this? Because these are written, all of these, Genesis to Revelation, these are written. Why? So that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing you may have life in his name. And is belief just, oh, I think this, I understand this? No, it's more than that. What does it mean? What? Knowledge, yes, is a part of it, but what is the bigger?
In totality.
Living like Christ.
Yes, that's it, living like Christ.
Totality.
What would be a synonym that you could take out in believing and put in and it'd be still true?
Faith.
I'm looking for a key word.
She said living. She said living, no?
Begins with an O. And it ends in obedience. Obedience. Right.
Obedience to the will
That
of
you
God.
may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that obeying you may have life in his name. Now, are you just making that up, Chip? No. If you go to John chapter 3, same gospel, John chapter 3, verse 36, you will see that Jesus himself equates belief with obedience. Belief is not simply an acquiescence to a certain amount of facts.